Om Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Gurur Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Pariyandam Vande Guru Paramparam Sruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Logashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badharayanam Sutra Bhashya Krudo Vande Bhagavando Panah Panah Isharo Gururatmedi Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavat Vyaptadeyaya Dikshana Murte Nam Prajnanam Shupradane Stirajaranagara Vyabhivir Vyapya Logan Bhukta Bhogan Stavishtan Punaravidishanot Bhasidan Kamajanyan Pitva Sarvan Visheshan Swapati Madurabhung Maya Bhojayanno Maya Sankhya Turiyam Paramamradamajam Brahmayattan Natosmi Gajananam Bhodaganadi Sevidam Kabithajam Bhuvalasara Bhakshidam Umasudam Shogavinashagaranam Namami Vikneshwara Padavankajam Om Saraswati Namastubhyam Marade Jnana Rupini Vidyarambham Garishyami Siddhar Bhavati Me Sada Stapakaya Dharmasya Sarva Dharma Surupini Avadara Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya Te Namah Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahi Tejasvinavadidamastu Ma Vidushavahi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Atmabodham as an introductory text is enabling us to understand or is enabling or is giving a space to is enabling a space to us to rediscover or recognize our true self. Atmabodham, the bodham about yourself, and that self is Atma. And the right knowing or understanding about that Atma is needed. And that Atma is your true nature, the true identity, the true self. And if you see, as a human birth, the fundamental purpose we feel that having a meaning in this world, having a meaningful life, having certain materialistic possessions, etc. But fundamentally we understand that those are just impermanent and we just need all those things for the sake of transaction. For the transactional purpose we need the Vyavahara Loga or the Vyavaharika Prapancha. But the ultimate goal in our life is basically understanding the true purpose. And when we understand the true purpose, when I say the true purpose, knowing the true self. Knowing the true self only will bring comfort and peace. And that comfort and peace only will take us away from the chaos that the world is giving. The world is always trying to give chaos. Correct? Because when we deal with things, you cannot anticipate that everything will be going as per our wish. So that is where the chaos comes from the world. Chaos comes from the Prapancha. But how to overcome those chaos? When one finds the comfort and peace within and find the higher purpose in life, so called as moksha or inner freedom or mukti. So one has to know this truth and one has to be in the true companion with that self. One has to know this truth and one has to be in the true companion of that truth, that self. So when you say companion with that true self, what needs the companion now? What needs the companion? Our subtle organ, so called as the mind. Because now the ajnanam or the ignorance is prevalent at the plane of mind. The mind has created a superficial feeling that I am this, I am this, I am this, right? And this is the kind of purpose that I have in life, dealing with the worldly objects. As I mentioned some time back, the mind has got the property of borrowing the consciousness and reflect. And mind in this body as a medium will reflect the consciousness, and that reflected consciousness or the pratibimba chaitanyam makes a superficial feeling that I am this body, I am this mind, I am this sense, I am these capabilities. And as an individual who is interacting in this world, the mind makes a superficial or a notional personality that I am this, I am this, I am that, and forgetting the true nature. This is the unique, the property of the mind. So what happens is basically we forget our true nature. And the scriptures or the satsangam always help us in terms of, having a communion with that true self. So the satsangam is all about being in your swarupam. When we talk only one subject, about the truth. All scriptures talk only one subject, about the truth. So when we are talking about that truth, as Bhagavatam says, Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikave Muhyandi Sure. The truth which is there in me and you, that is the same truth. That same truth is allowing us to hear as well as listen about the same truth. That is where the free flow happens. And satsangam satsangam can be in different ways, including the puja vidhanam that you do, the daily rituals that you do when you go to a temple and finding that peace, or when you are immersed in chanting the Sahasranamam, or doing anything which is which gives the avenue to be in the true companion of the self. There you are beyond all the limitations of the worldly things, including the body, mind, intellect, senses, etc. You yourself is forgetting. Last time also I mentioned that when you are immersed in that, that is the state of flow, where the petty things or the limitations around you will not bother you. So the truth satsang is all about being in your Surupam, the true nature. So as Bhajagovinda in Bhagavad-pada, in Bhajagovindam says, Satsangate Nisangatvam, Nisangatve Nirmohatvam, Nirmohatve Nischalatatvam, and Nischalatatve Jivan Mukti. Satsangate Nisangatvam. Satsangam is all about what? About or you being in the company of good or the wise. You being in the company of a system that allows us to understand the truth within and be with that truth. So that is the meaning of good or wise here. So what happens is basically you are forgetting the objects. You are with the subject. Why can't you put the fan so that mosquitoes will not drop? So when you are in the company of wise or good, when you are in the company of discussing about the truth, discussion is all about, again being with that truth, knowing the truth and being with that truth, being with the subject. So where is the question of objects disturbing you? So that is where Satsangate Nisangatvam. Nisangatvam is all about, what is Nisangada? Nisangada is what? Nisangada is basically, what is Nisangatvam? You are not attached to the world. So when you talk about the truth, when you are talking about the truth and realizing or being in the communion of that truth, what happens is you are forgetting the objects. You are being away from the objects. And you are also not trapped in those objects. So that is where the detachment comes from, right? So, detachment from the impermanent and attachment towards the truth which is permanent. So how that happens? Through satsang. When you read, when you are in the company of wise and good, who talks about the truth? It is not about something else. When you are listening to a talk, that talk talks about this truth. What is the truth? The truth about your reality. So what happens? You forget the objects because you are with the subject. So when you are with the subject, obviously you will forget the objects. You will get dispassion from those objects. You get an attachment towards the subject called as abhayam. And nisangatve nirmohatvam, meaning the positive influence that you get out of this, the samskaram, the kind of culture that you have. And the culture is about what? Nitya anitya vastu vivekam. Knowing about the true, knowing about the permanent, knowing about the impermanent, withdrawing from the impermanent and attaching to the permanent. This is called as the vairagya. So discrimination and dispassion. And what happens? The non-attachment or non-dependence on the world. When I say non-dependence on the world, it is not about running away from the world. It is not something like, stop working in this world. No. Non-dependence on the world, but still you are doing the karmam as a karma yoga. Not giving up the things in the world, not giving up things in your family or your profession, but should not have attachment to those things. You can have love to those things. What happens? Attachment is all about, attachment is something that dilutes or pollutes the love. You should have a love, but you should not have attachment. And you should also enjoy, right? When I say enjoy or enjoyment, you should also have a relationship with the things which you are dealing, but you should not have a dependence on those things. You can have a relationship in terms of, dealing with the things, but don't have a dependence on the outside world. Don't have dependence on the things which you are dealing with. When I say dependence, it is all about ragam and dvesham. Dependence is all about what? Ragam. Having a kind of, attachment towards that in terms of achieving or in terms of possessing. Or you should not be like, aversion about that thing. So you should just deal it. You should not have raga dvesham. You should not have dependence. You should not have bondage on the things. You can love the things which you are working. So what happens? In this case, satsangatve nisangatvam, nisangate nirmohatvam. So what happens is basically when you have a non-attachment towards the world or towards the worldly objects, what happens is basically you will be free from the delusion. Because you know what is reality, what is practical in life, what to be attached, what not to be attached. These all need to be at the plane of transaction. You can use it for transactional sake, not for dependence sake. So then the freedom from the delusion. Satsangate nisangatvam, nisangate nirmohatvam, nirmohate nishchalatattvam. So when you are free from the delusion, what will happen? Nishchalatattvam. Nishchalatattvam is all about abiding in that self. Abiding in that self without any motion or vibrations. This is what we do in the meditation. Being in the communion of that self. So what happens? Nishchalatattvam is all about abidance in that self, abidance in that knowledge. So, Nishchalatattve Jivan Mukti. Once you have an abidance in that self-knowledge, you will have freedom in your life when you are alive. That is called as the Jivan Mukta Avastha. In this body, in this Janma, finding out the true self and find out the inner freedom. This is called as liberation. This is called as Mukti. This is called as Moksham. This is called as Jivan Mukta Avastha. So when we deal with things in the world, there are two aspects. Let us try to understand that. One is basically experience about, as well as second is the seeing. For example, seeing a cup of tea, experiencing a cup of tea. Is there a difference between these two? Yes or no? So, but by seeing a cup of tea, without experiencing also, can you have different thoughts? Can you have some sort of, thoughts or ideas or notions? You can have, right? Maybe by looking at the glass, you may think, oh, this cup of coffee or cup of tea is prior experience of having tea or having tea from the same person or the same place. But what is that when you drink tea? Is that seeing or is that something like having an idea or a notion? What is happening there? It is just experience. It is just anubhava. Or it can be, it is not a sensory aspect. When you drink tea, you are using your hand, you are using your tongue, you are holding the cup of coffee in the mouth, and the tongue is not saying, your mug is not saying, your hand is not saying anything. What is happening is you are experiencing the cup of coffee or tea. And that cannot be perceived. And when I say that I am enjoying the cup of tea, will you get any experience there? Okay, or if you are drinking, I will not get any perception about what is that experience you are having. So this experience is unique. It is not seeing. It is not a perception also. Right? So but what is happening is basically we are dealing at the plane of Indriya Gochara Vastus, so called as the perception. You are looking at something. You are creating a perception in yourself. Correct? Or you are looking at something and you are thinking that this is wonderful, this is beautiful, etc. These all are the perceptions that you are creating, and we call those perceptions as truth. Isn't it so? By looking at something, you create certain perceptions and you say that this is the truth. Similarly, by looking at something, some names, forms, etc., and you start appreciating without knowing, without even having an experience about that, you are crafting certain perceptions and notions and you are declaring it as this is the truth. And we are depending on that sort of perceptions that you created out of seeing things. And you are trying to depend on that. Maybe after seeing a vastu, after seeing an object, you created certain ideas or perceptions about that. This is good, this is the one which I was looking, and let me have this, let me depend upon this, let me get this thing more. But what is happening is basically you are wrongly identifying that as the truth out of the perceptions that you created. And you are having a dependence on that. Right? So what is happening is we are creating dependence on the idam padartham. Idam meaning what you can see. Right? What you can see, including the body, including the mind, including the senses, including the capabilities, including the world that you live, including the relationships that you have, including the associations that you have with others. These all are idam. This idam is experienced by aham. And aham is not changing, but idam is always changing. And you are creating a dependence on the idam padartham. So the ashrayam is on the idam padartham. When you have the ashrayam on the idam padartham, then obviously you will become a samsari. We all will become a bandhan. You are bounded. So now the ashrayam should be on what? Ashrayam should be on the aham padartham. So in the Upanishad, Lord Shiva is mentioned as aham, namo aham padarthaya. Correct. Namo aham padarthaya loganam siddhi hedave Satchidananda rupaya Shivaya parama. Shivan is as the aham padartham. And my true nature is what? Shivoham Shivoham Mano buddhi hankara chitta ninaham Nacha srotra jihve Nacha krana netre Nacha vyoma bhumir Na tejo na vayu Chidananda rupa Shivoham Shivoham. Shivan is our true self. Shivan is the satta. Shivam is the anubhavam which is there within us. Shivam is the experience. Shivam is the isness. Shivam is the consciousness. Shivam is the andaryami. Shivam is the true happiness, the bliss. Shiva is the andaryami. And the ashrayam should be on the satvastu, Shivam. Ashrayam should be on the aham padartham, not on the idam. So this is all discrimination. Aham idam vivegam. Aham idam vivejanam. So for understanding the aham, what we need is the atma nivedanam. When you say atma nivedanam, surrendering the mind. Surrendering the mind to get decoupled from the idam to aham. Who is creating problem here? Mind is creating the problem. Mind is the subtler instrument here. Mind in association with the body and the other objects are creating this kind of notions and wrong dependence. Now, the reality is different. This understanding is there. So what one has to do? Ask the mind to listen and ultimately be with the aham. So the mind has to work. The mind has to coordinate. Mind has to not coordinate. Mind has to cooperate. So Atma Nivedanam is the first step. Atma Nivedanam is all about bhakti. Atma Nivedanam is all about surrender. Surrendering of the mind to decouple from the idam and attach to the aham. And one should also do the Atma Vicharam, and this is the margam or the way of jnanam. bhakti and jnanam. So once we have bhakti, bhaktya jnanam prajayade. Through bhakti, through surrender, knowing about that higher reality which is there within us, but due to the limitations of the mind and the system that we are living, the mind has to surrender to that higher reality, and ultimately the mind has to be purified, the mind has to be still, and ultimately one will be with that reality, and that is the state of Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi. So one has to start from the basic knowledge about the true self and work on the level of mind. For that, surrender is needed, bhakti is needed, and continuous touch to gain this knowledge, being with the association of the wise, being in the companion or group of people who talks about this truth. There is no other subject, only one subject about the truth. So here one has to understand that body plus the world, the body, when I say body, the complete build, plus the world you are interacting, the world you are living. This is all about the physical science. And this body plus the world which you are interacting, this is called as the physical science, and this physical science has got limitations of space, time, object, causation. Because this body is also limited. And the relationship of this body to this world is also limited. And the world is also changing. Correct? See, can flight do a takeoff if it is a moving plane? Because the flight is also moving. Flight is also, start running. And if the plane is also moving, can it take a takeoff? Or if it is, wobbling, can the flight do a takeoff? So what is needed? What is needed as permanent? What is needed as consistent or constant? It cannot be the world. Because world is all about distractions. So body plus world is all about the physical science, and that physical science is having the limitations or influences of the space-time object causation. And body plus the inner world, this is called as the spiritual science. And in spiritual science, when you are going inward, where is the question of space-time object causation happening? Because your reality, the truth which is there, it is beyond all the limitations of space-time object causation. When we are in unison with that, unison with that truth, we can say unison with the God, unison with Atma, unison with Brahman. And you don't need to get that thing from outside. You need to make that unison possible. You need to recognize and be with that. That is the only thing we have to do here. So that is where Shruti says, Praptasya Praptam. It is nothing like you need to get from outside. It is very clear. Now let me come back. When you say experience and the seeing, we have got two natures, lower nature and the higher nature. Bhagavan says this in the which chapter of Bhagavad Gita? The Para Prakriti and Apara Prakriti comes in which chapter? In the Jnana Yogam. Correct. So Bhagavan says that, hey Arjuna, understand that you have got a lower nature and a higher nature. When you say lower nature, understand that your higher nature mixed up with the mind and all other traits. The moment you understand that you are not the mind and you do a cleansing of the mind, you will be with the higher nature. So, This understanding has to happen in everyone. When our drishti is with this understanding, when your drishti is having the jnanam, when the drishti has got this jnanamayam, then the jagat becomes brahmamayam. You will never see anything in this world beyond the Brahman, beyond the truth. Because the names and forms cannot independently exist. The names and forms exist based on the existence consciousness bliss principle called as Asti Bhadi Priyam. Namarupa alone cannot exist. Correct. So, when one sees this existence consciousness bliss principle in every Namarupam, then your view of the world will be Brahmamayam. Whatever you see in the changing objects, don't go after the changing objects. You appreciate that. Yeah, this is good, but understand the reality behind the changing objects. That is where Bhagavan says in the Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yoga, Idam Shariram Kaunteya Kshetram Ityabhidiyade Yedat Yo Vetidam Prahu Kshetrajna Idi Tadvidaha Idam Shariram Kaunteya. We all are seen as Shariram, correct? Because we cannot deny that. The all individuals are different. There is a specific set of attributes to all individuals. All are Idam Shariram Kaundeya Kshetram Ityabhidiyade. All Sharirams are like Kshetram. Then Edat Yo Vetidam Prahu Kshetrajna Idi Tadvidaha. But there is a Kshetrajnan that is common to all Kshetram. It means what? The Kshetram is all about Shariram. If you go back to Atmabodha, what are the three Shariram? Let me also look for a participation from each one of you, because as one of you
Sukshma Sharira and Karana Sharira.
Correct. So, because one of you rightly mentioned that a 3 p.m. class on a Sunday, right? This is something, very difficult. Maybe I will say that this is also very unpleasant, right? After a heavy lunch, and again this is the time for taking a nap. And comparatively Sunday afternoon, we will make ourselves free. And on the top of that, if you have Satsangam, it is extremely difficult. On the top of that, the topic that you are talking, right? No, I don't want to say further on this. That makes us, very unpleasant. Yeah, it's a reality, right? And again, don't feel that if we are, closing our eyes for some time, the mind is becoming, calm. Basically, mind is settling down. And what happens when the mind is not working? You go into the Shanti Sthiti or Samadhi Sthiti, right? It's not bad, don't worry. But only thing is, the mind is not able to comprehend those things. Because mind is already loaded, and mind now is trying to plunge into that reality, like in your deep sleep. Correct? That is what is happening. So it's not a problem. However, so as you rightly mentioned, the three Shariram, the Sthula Shariram, Sukshma Shariram, and the Karna Shariram. That means the physical body to mind, intellect, ego, memory, your physiological functions. Then comes the causal body, the vasana, the traits, the unfulfilled desires, etc. These all are Shariram. Meaning, Shariram is a combination of Sthula, Sukshma, Karana Shariram. Hey Arjuna, understand that all these Shariram, all bodies are Shariram, and those bodies are the three bodies: Sukshma Stula Karana Shariram. And you are not this body. You are not this Stula Sukshma Karana Shariram. You are the Kshetrajnan. You are the divine principle. You are the Atma. You are the Chaitanyam. You are the Kshetrajnan. You are the experiencer. And that experiencer is not bounded to any sensory organs. You don't need a sensory organ to experience your true self. It is beyond. So what is happening is basically, as I mentioned, the mind is having the capability of borrowing the original consciousness, and it reflects this consciousness in this medium so-called as the body, and this phenomena makes the mind feel that I am seemingly sentient. Mind is borrowing and reflecting with the help of this reflecting medium, and that capability of the mind is making that I am seemingly sentient and forgetting the true nature, forgetting about the consciousness from where the mind has borrowed the truth. The mind has borrowed the reality from. That is what we have seen in the 28th verse. If you go back, Atma avabhasayatyego buddhyadini indriyanyavi divo khadadivat swatma jadaistairna avabhasyade. So what is unifying all the kshetram? It is the kshetrajnan. It is the Atma. It is the self. It is that self which is illumining our mind and sense organs. The analogy given here is just as a lamp illumines a jar or a pot. Correct? And the jar or pot by alone cannot make that light. The light is coming from the candle, and based on the type of the jar or color of the jar, the light is also created. But the candle is the one which is the source of light, and the pots cannot illumine by itself, by their own self, because by inherent nature they are inert. Similarly, the body, mind, whatever you see, the names and forms, by inherent nature they all are inert. There is a conscious principle which is powering them, including our body, mind, intellect. So Atma is always avabhasadi. Atma ega avabhasayadi. Meaning Atma is the ever shining, ever effulging principle. And that Atma is not confined to this body, that in that Atma every body shines. So, meaning that Atma is out of the limitations of the upadis, the different bodies. Are you all with me? So, that consciousness, that Atma is a continuum that flows without any causality. Correct? So that is where it is called as the universal consciousness. And when that universal consciousness is looked from an individual with the associations of the mind and the other attributes, that Atma is called as Jiva Atma. Hey Arjuna, you please understand that your true self is not different from the universal consciousness. That is what the Mahavakyam says, Tattvamasi. Atma avabhasedi. Atma illumines the entire anatma. The entire jadam is illuminated by the Atma. Verse number 29. We have seen this in on last Sunday. Sobodhe nanya bodhe cha bodharupadayatmanaha na deepasya anyadeepecho na deepasya anyadeepecha yada swatma prakashane. Subodhe na anya bodhe cha bodharupadayatmanaha na deepasya anyadeepecha yada swatma prakashane. So, just as a lighted lamp doesn't need another lamp to illumine its light. A similar analogy we can use. Do you need a mirror to know that you exist? You don't need. Similarly, Atman, which is that knowledge in itself, because you don't need an extra knowledge or an outside knowledge for your existence, for knowing your existence. So the Atman, which is the knowledge in itself, needs no other knowledge from outside to know itself. That is where the Mahavakyam comes as Prajnanam Brahma. This self is all awareness, consciousness and bliss absolute. So, what happens is basically, in truth, what is experienced is real, but when you deal with the objective world, because you are dealing with the objects, you are dealing with the things in the world, the original experience is getting drifted towards the object, and mind as a factor where it creates the reflected consciousness as well as create the feeling of the sentiency. What happens is basically we drift away from our core. And what happens is basically, as we all are dealing with the transactions, and the transactions should also coexist. So ultimately we drift away from the core. That is what is happening. And in the end, what happens is you are getting moved or you are getting evolved. When I say evolved, you are going away from the reality. You are moving away from the reality and you are creating a duality. You are creating a reality which is non-real outside and through the transactions. That is where knower and known, that is where subject and object, that is where I and that is where aham and idam. Is there any experience without you, the experiencer? So what happens is basically we are drifting away from the seer to seen, and you believe that whatever you see is the reality, and forgetting the reality within. Forgetfulness of your reality is ajnanam. So what is the way? Get this jnanam, train the mind and be with the subject. And this is a journey. And again, this is not just a theoretical understanding and completely changing. It changes. This is a journey, and that is where we are working for. 30th verse. Nishidhya nikhilopadhin neti neti iti vakyadaha vidyadaikyam mahavakyai jivatma paramatmano. Very beautiful. So now Shruti always says that neti 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 mano buddhi ahankara chitta ninaham nacha shrotra jihve nacha krana netre nacha vyoma bhumi na tejo na vayu. I am not this, I am not this, I am not this, I am not this. Very logically you can negate. So by the process of negating these ubadis, this negation of this and that happens through what? Vivekam. What is permanent, what is not permanent? Am I the body? When you start looking into that, no, I am not the body because I am something beyond. Am I the mind? Yeah, I cannot be the mind. And again we say that my mind, my body, it's not I body, I mind. This is something what I possess. But the real possessor, the real I is different. Otherwise you would have called it as I body, I mind, I intellect, etc. But we are not. So that is where we do the negation. Nedi, nedi, nedi. I am not, I am not, I am not, I am not, I am not. Ultimately you see that I am this truth. That is where the Mahavakyam is helping us. Right? Or what is Mahavakyam? These all are the Vaidika aphorisms we can say. Or the great equations. What are those 4 Mahavakyam? What are the 4 Mahavakyam? Tatvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Atma Brahma, and Prajnanam Brahma. Right, but we have discussed this many times, but let us go little bit into this. Prajnanam Brahma. Brahman is pure consciousness and you are that. This is from the Aitareya Upanishad, from the Rigveda stream, from the Aitareya Upanishad, Rigvedam, Prajnanam Brahma, saying that Brahman is pure consciousness. This very awareness is Brahman, and this Mahavakyam is called as the Lakshana Vakyam. Lakshana Vakyam, maybe we can say it's defining your true self as Brahman, and that Brahman is your very awareness. This Brahman is pure consciousness. Prajnanam Brahma, coming from the Aitareya Upanishad, the Rigveda Upanishad, Rigveda based Upanishad. This defines Lakshana Vakyam. Prajnanam Brahma. Then comes Aham Brahmasmi. Aham Brahmasmi. That comes from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, the Yajurveda based Upanishad, Brihadaranyakam. Aham Brahmasmi. I am Brahman. I am Brahman. And this is the Anubhava Vakya. This is basically the wisdom that one should have. This is Anubhava. This is your,
experience.
This is your experience. This has to be the wisdom. Then the third, there is no order, but Lakshana Vakyam, Upadesha Vakyam, Anubhava Vakyam, Anusandhana Vakyam. The second or third we can say Tattvamasi, that thou art. This is from the Chandogya Upanishad, Samaveda Pradana Vedam, Samavedam, Chandogya Upanishad, Tattvamasi. You are this ultimate reality. You are not different from that reality. And this is called as the Upadesha Vakyam. Lakshana Vakyam, Upadesha Vakyam, Anubhava Vakyam. Aham Brahmasmi. And the last one is the I am Atma Brahma. This is the Anusandhana Vakyam. This comes from the Atharva Veda based Upanishad, so called as the Mandukya Upanishad. This very self is Brahman. What these four Mahavakyas are saying? What is the gist of all Mahavakyas?
You are Brahman.
You are the Brahman. You are the ultimate reality. You are the truth. You are the truth, and that is what you are looking for as your ultimate realization in life.
What is the last one?
Anusandhana Vakyam.
What does it mean?
This is basically, this is the conviction. This very self is Brahman. This is the conviction that comes out of the Bhakti and Jnana. Are you all with me? Right. So, self-realization is attained by neti. No, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. I am the truth, I am that true self. That is what Mahavakyas are helping us. You cannot be this, right? You cannot be the limiting factors, you cannot be the Ubadi. And this self is not even the body that is comprised of, the gross, subtle and the causal bodies. You are not this inert, you are not a Jadam, you are the Satta. Even though you are interacting with the Jada Padartham, you cannot be associated with those things. You are the Satvastu, you are Purnam, you are the complete. You are that truth. So what is happening is basically this Jivatma. When I say that truth which is in association with the mind and the other layers around, creates a superficial distance between the higher truth, the higher reality, and due to the nature of mind, the mind associates with the objects and make a feeling that I am a limited individual, I am a limited being. And this distance will also increase when you are drifting away from the core. So one has to have the Atma, Anatma Vivegam, Vairagyam, Shadga Sambati, Mumukshutvam. Negate the false. Negate the false. Maybe from a practical example, maybe I can say I met this person. I'm just introducing a person to you. I met, say for example, this Mr. Singh 15 years back in Chandigarh. At that time, Mr. Singh was running a small shop. That Mr. Singh is standing next to me. Hey, see that Mr. Singh, whom I met 15 years back in Chandigarh, who was running a small shop there. Now he has moved to Bangalore and he has become a crorepati, he has become a millionaire. Is that same Mr. Singh here? The 15 years back Mr. Singh I am referring, is that the same Mr. Singh standing in front of me?
Yes.
So, what is the problem here then? These all are the problems with the conditioning that we are creating. The same individual, 15 years back, which I mentioned, same individual is standing next to us. What we have done is basically we have created a lot of conditionings. Similarly, the same truth which is there in all of us, we have conditioned that truth and we have got drifted with those conditionings. The Jiva has got conditioned by the body, mind, intellect, sense with various vasanas, with various problems, and ultimately coming into a picture that I am a limited being.
So when we say Jiva, we mean the Atma or the body? Just the term.
Mind that has created the kind of perception in the mind, right? And that, what is the perception? The perception is all about I am a limited being, though I am not. So Jiva, when I say Jiva, the mind which is working on that truth, where mind is having a substratum, the truth as a substratum, the mind has drifted from that truth and the mind has created a limitation. When I say mind, the Jiva, meaning the original consciousness which is already conditioned by the mind and all other layers, and the mind has created this feeling that I am limited, and now you are suffering. So now
when we say Jivatma, we mean the Atma, right?
It is the Atma, correct, but it is the Atma that is conditioned by the mind. Though Atma cannot be conditioned, but the mind has created some false perceptions and the mind has misled us. That is what I am saying. So Jivatma in this context, please understand that the Atma with a conditioned mind and other layers. And what should happen when the Jiva dissociates itself from the matter realm, or when the Jiva gets dissociated from the assumed or egocentric individualities or possessions? When that will happen? When the mind is clear, when the mind is pure. So then the mind itself is not reflecting and creating the notional distance. At that point of time, the Mahavakya Upadesham is apt. Tattvamasi, you are that. But otherwise, this is good for a definition. Prajnanam Brahma Tattvamasi. Your true reality is that. Your true reality is not a conditioned reality which is made by the mind and the other layers. So in order to come out of those conditionings, what should happen? The mind has to start becoming pure. When the mind starts becoming pure, the vasanas, the effects of vasanas, the influence of the vasanas, with the knowledge will come down, and ultimately the Jiva will realize that I am not different from that higher reality. So that is where the Jiva, Atma, Paramatma, Aikyam comes, and the Tattvamasi, Tattva Sakshatkaram happens. So the common denominator between Tada and Tvam is the Asi. The common denominator between the Jiva and Ishvara is same. Maybe it is easy to say that the mind and the other clutters have created these conditionings. Otherwise, you are no different from that truth. So the infinite, again in a very simple way, the infinite conditioned by the matter and mind is called as Jiva. The infinite reality we are, when it is conditioned by the mind and matter, is called as Jiva or Jivatma. So what one has to do? That conditioning which is done by matter and mind should be lifted up so that Jiva Atma becomes the Paramatma. Realizing this is not just hearing this and that will not help us. Realizing this and abiding in that reality and living in this world with peace and love, that is the ultimate aim. So that is where one becomes free in life. Let us see the next verse number 31. Avidyagam shariradi drishyam buddhavat ksharam edad vilakshanam vidyad aham brahmedi nirmalam. Avidyagam shariradi drishyam buddhavat ksharam edad vilakshanam nirmalam brahma aham idi vidyat. So the body, mind, intellect, senses, up to the, when you have to understand one thing here. When I say body, mind, intellect, sense, etc., it is not only the gross, it also includes the subtle body, mind, intellect, sense. It also includes the causal body, mind, intellect, senses. So that is where body is called as ignorance, because this body is percolated in the three states, that is the gross, subtle and causal. So meaning gross body, mind, intellect, sense, subtle body, mind, intellect, sense, causal body, mind, intellect, senses, all are objects. All are objects. The meaning Stula, Sukshma, Karana, Shariram, or they three are combinedly the objects, including the mind, including the vasanas, including the traits, including your nature of the body that is made up of the Panchabhudam, Agasham, Jalam, Vayu, Agni, Prithvi. These all are objects, meaning these all came from the Prakriti. So the law of nature is, if something has come from the Prakriti, it has to go back to the Prakriti. So then, can this causal, subtle and gross body can exist by their own? Because it came from Prakriti, there is no consciousness coming from the Prakriti. So something that has come from the Prakriti will go back to Prakriti. Let us take the example of the waves or the bubbles which are there in the water. From where the bubbles came, from where the waves came? From the water, from the ocean. Waves came into picture, existed for some time, it will go back. Waves are perishable. What is then not perishable? The water. Similarly, the three Shariram, Stula, Sukshma, Karana, Shariram, are perishable. What is not perishable is the underlying force or this truth which is there, which is shining in this body. So one must understand through this discrimination what is that? I am this Brahman, I am this consciousness, I am this reality, and I am entirely different from the Ubadi, including the Stula, Sukshma, Karana, Shariram. I am different from the Ubadi. You need to understand that how the waves come into picture, stay for some time, go back. Similarly, these objects came from the Prakriti and it will go back to Prakriti. But what is permanent is always the Purushan, the reality, the Kshetrajnan. You are the Kshetrajnan. So when self is identified in a gross body, see basically when you say gross body, in the waking state, in the Jagrada Avastha, at this state. So that reality is called as Vishwan. This Brahman or the Atma is called in the awakened state as, or in the Jagrada Avastha as the Vishwan. And again that self which is identified in a subtle body. In the subtle body, or we can say in the state of dream. Correct? When you are in the dreaming state. That reality is also called as Taijasan in the Swapna Sthiti. And again, the self which is the true nature, when you undergo the sleep, the deep sleep. so called as the Sushupti. Correct? And there is no experience in the Sushupti Avastha, and that self is called as Prajnan or Prajnaha in the Sushupti Avastha. And now let me ask a question. Is this self different in these three avasthas? The self cannot be different. The self whom we are inquiring is our true nature, and this self is the real witness. And this self is beyond the three avasthas. The self is beyond the three avasthas. And that is where the Mandukya Upanishad says, Sarvam Hedat Brahma, Ayam Atma Brahma, Soyam Atma Chadushpad. Chadushpad meaning this is the fourth state, so called as the Turiya Avastha. What is that? Jagrat, Swapnam, Sushupti and the Turiya. And there is no fourth state as such. The so-called fourth state is the implied state in all the three avasthas called as Jagrad, Swapna and the Sushupti. And the fourth state, when we say, though we call it as a different state, but this is the state that is encompassing all other states, and that is called as the Turiya Avastha or Turiya Chaitanya or Turiya Brahman. These are the different ways the Atma is referred. I think it's clear. The four Mahavakya Upadesham plus the true nature of Brahman, right? And this Brahman is beyond all the three avasthas, beyond all the three bodies called as Sukshma, Sthula, Karana, Sharira. And this Brahman is the implied state that is beyond and behind the three avasthas, so called as the Jagrat, Swapnam, Sushupti. Correct. So now coming to the 32nd verse. Dehanyatvan me janma jaragarshalayadayah shabdadi vishayai sango nirindriyadaya naja dehanyatvad janma jarakarsya layadaya me nah nirindriyadaya shabdadi vishayai sangaha chana. So what is the meaning here? I am different from the body. So now this verse is basically saying that I am not the body. This is the nedi, right? I am different from what? I am different from the body. So I cannot undergo the changes that this body is undergoing. What are the changes that body is undergoing? Asti jayade varthade vivarinamade apakshiyade vinasya. Going, right? Life, birth, growing, maturing, decay and finally perishing. So, am I witnessing the changes happening in the body?
Yes.
In that case, I cannot be the body. I have nothing to do with the plane of body because I am witnessing the changes happening in the body. Even I am witnessing the objects in the form of sound, taste, etc. And my existence is not dependent on the sensory organs or the sensory system, including the body, including the mind, including the senses. I am not then sensitive, or I am not going to undergo the parinamam that are going to happen for the body. Because I am able to witness the changes happening in the body. Are you all with me? Then I cannot be the body. That's what Bhagavad Father says in the Nirvana Shatkam. Mano buddhyahankara chitta ninaham nacha srotra jihve nacha krana netre najam vyoma bhumir hatejo navayu chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham nacha prana sajno navaibanja vayu nava saptadadur nava panchagosha navakpani padu najo vastavayu chidananda rupa shivoham shivoham. Start negating one by one, one by one, one by one. You will understand that I cannot be the body, I cannot be the mind, I cannot be the intellect. Anyo andara atma manomaya, anyo andara atma pranamaya. I am beyond the manomaya kosham. I am beyond the annamaya kosham. I am beyond the pranamaya kosham. I am beyond the Vijnanamaya kosham. I am beyond the Anandamaya kosham. So this verse basically says that I am able to see the changes happening in the body. So then logically I cannot be the body. I cannot undergo the modifications which are happening in the body. So then it is very logical that I am not the body. So one has to apply the Vivekam here. Who am I? I am the absolute, immutable spirit. I am the self which is unborn, which is not undergoing any changes. I am this self which is not undergoing the Shad Vigaram. Asti Jayade Varthade Viparinamade Apakshiyade Vinashyadi. I cannot be the changes. I cannot be the body because that body itself is undergoing the changes. Om Kayena Vacha Manasendriyarva Buddhyatmana va Prakriti Swabhavat Karomi Ityat Sagalam Parasmai Narayanayeti Samarpayam. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Om